Alright, sorry for the slow setup. And sorry again for being late today. When am I never not late, actually? Also, welcome. Today, we've got a couple of things on the menu, so to speak. One, I'm not gonna play Starfield today. Probably not. I mean, I always say that, and I always end up doing it. Because I needed to step away from it. We're getting too involved with the stories to the point where I'm like, way too into it. Yes, John Howard. Yeah, so you may be wondering what my go live notification message means, okay? John Riccitello, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He is the CEO of Unity3D. And Unity3D, if you don't know, is a game engine. And they've been under some hot water lately. John Riccitello has... I'm saying his name specifically because he's the head of the entire company, so he is responsible for these decisions. They've recently gone ahead with a new pricing change, which changes the entire landscape of every Unity 3D developed game out in existence, whether or not you're a large developer or a small developer. So, let me just move my head over here just so I can, do this properly. For context, let me explain how Unity 3D works currently. There's no royalty, and you pay a flat fee per year per person that wants to use Unity in your company once you pass a certain revenue threshold, okay? The difference in revenue thresholds between the two major engines, of which I'm simply including Unity and Unreal. There's a couple of other game engines out there, okay? The landscape is massive in terms of game engines, but those two are the two that people mainly think about when you think about a game engine that you can license. My head's too big. That's exactly the point. Today is Big Brain Day, okay? Today is Big Brain Day. So Big Brain Day requires Big Head Day, okay? Between these two engines, they have very different licensing thresholds. Unreal Engine, okay, only charges you a 5% royalty once you've made at least $1 million in lifetime revenue. Which means, and revenue, just for context, is not profit. Revenue is how much money you take in before you subtract things for costs. So if you make $1 million and it costs you $1 million to make that $1 million, you still owe 5% on that $1 million. You think that's ass, but you have to understand, you only get charged if you make money. That's a very specific difference here. And very specifically, this model operates on the sort of unspoken tenet of when you succeed as a game developer, we succeed as a company that provides you with the engine that does all the low-level hard stuff, right? As a game developer, using these engines saves you a lot of time. You don't have to deal with low-level stuff. You don't have to program everything and try to figure out how to get the maximum performance and just interfacing with like low-level platform SDKs across multiple platforms, right? You don't have to care about how Linux does it. You don't have to care about how macOS does it. You don't even have to care about how different versions of Windows does it, different versions of DirectX, to get the best performance and the best possible graphics. Instead, you can just make your game logic on top of it. Squirrel Stapler would probably not be made without these game engines because they'd be spending all that time trying to figure out how to hook into DirectX. Now, it seems like ass, but again, you only pay if you succeed. If you make $0, what's 5% of 0? Nothing. If you make $10, what's 5% of $10? Like 5 cents or something, right? The amount that you pay to Epic Games for using their engine scales with how much you make. And if you make less money, all things considered, you only pay the cost that you already pay, right? Internally. Unity, up until now, has taken up a very different approach. They charge a flat fee. They charge $2,079. $2,079 per person in your company that wants to use the engine. But if you're just a solo developer, until you've made $100,000, you can just use the engine and just sell your games, and they don't take anything. It's only once you've made past $100,000 that you have to then pay and to upgrade your license to the Unity Pro, which then increases the threshold to $1 million, right? But even then, $2,079 per year, if you expect to make $1 million, is nothing. This is on top of the fact that you don't have to pay on things like in-app purchases, which is most of what, free-to-play games make. For instance, think of Genshin Impact and stuff. until today, or last night actually. I was reading this last night very quickly. I made a series of long tweets on it that sort of didn't really encompass everything that's going on with it very well, and so I want to clarify some things about this. Epic is asked, can we agree on that? I'll get to that in a moment. Unity3D has just announced a new pricing scheme effective in January, which, if you may notice, today is, what month is it? It's September. How many months left until January? 3. Developers on Unity have 3 months to decide, do they want this, or do they have to move engines entirely? And I'm going to tell you right now, 3 months is not enough time to change everything, and I'll get into that in just a moment, why it's so difficult, specifically with the change from Unity to Unreal Engine. They're moving towards a different kind of pricing structure. The threshold is now doubled. For your free version of Unity, you don't have to pay until you make at least $200,000, which is great. Compared to the $100,000 of before, this is a much better overall threshold because it means that you can keep going on that one version of the engine for longer. And Unity Pro is still $1 million and so on, but you may notice this, install threshold. Every time someone installs your Unity3D game, you now pay money every time somebody installs it. You have to understand this is insanity, okay? Most of the time, this ends up being cheaper than what you pay for Unreal Engine. For instance, Obra Dinn. This is not a Unity3D game, but I want to clarify that I'm simply using its pricing as an example if it was made in Unity3D to show exactly what you would pay. This game costs, I think, $25.99 in Canadian, right? That's roughly like $22, $23 or $21 or something in USD, right? The fees that they would have to pay of, let's say even the highest fee of 20 cents, it's roughly about 1% of your total revenue, right? That's clearly a lot less than the Unreal Engine's revenue royalty of 5%. A lot less, right? And every percentage counts at scale. The lower the percentage, the lower your costs are overall, the more profit you can potentially bring. The problem, and this is something that people are starting to realize, is that it's based on install. For the most part, for most developers who make a game and sell their game for a certain dollar value, this is fine, right? At minimum, this does mean that you have to charge at least $4 for your game to meet the price of Epic Games' royalty rate for Unreal Engine, right? Because at $4 at 20 cents per install, that's 5% of your total revenue. The problem is when you have games that rely on large install volumes and relatively very little or people buying things inside the game itself. So, a great example is Among Us. Among Us is a free game. You can just go and download it anywhere you want on the phone or, I'm pretty sure you can play in the browser now. And on Steam, it's like a lower price, but still, for the most part, most people are just going to play on their phones. Everyone has a phone, not everyone has a computer. Every time somebody installs that game on their phone, those game developers are going to have to pay anywhere between 20 cents to 2 cents per install. A fraction of those people are going to actually buy the in-app purchases. How many of you have played Among Us and actually bought any of the actual cosmetic stuff in the game? I guarantee you, probably no one. The truth is, most of us don't even know that that stuff exists. Most of us don't even know that there's options to buy things in the game, that there's options to even buy the game in the first place. I mean, how many people find Among Us off of Steam? Most of us, for the most part, pay for a playing experience with ads, which pay significantly less overall compared to whatever this is. Now, that's just one free-to-play game, okay? And they've gone on Twitter. I couldn't find the tweet in time, so sorry, there's no link here. I couldn't find it in time for this segment, but they mentioned that this would be a significant cost, to the point where it'd be cheaper for them. The developer has gone on Twitter and said this. It's cheaper for them to hire someone to port their entire game, all of their games, because my voice cracked. I'm a voice cell. We'll get into that in adjust mode. All of their games to Unreal Engine than it is to keep it on Unity3D. This includes the VR games. This includes, their like base Among Us, like the famous game. Everything that they've ever made, it's cheaper to just port it over to Unreal Engine than it is to stay on Unity3D with this install cost. And that is one of the most famous games out there of all time, right? The most famous game, the most famous free-to-play game that should have a lot of revenue is still finding that they're going to be at a loss, all things considered, and so they have to think about moving in 3 months now. Think about that. the most famous game is having problems with this. Imagine all the other games that aren't as famous that don't have as many sales. I had some figures on my Twitter, but basically, every game that's free to play that doesn't make the amount of revenue that you would expect from, like, you know, a game that isn't free to play is basically dead in the water. On the subreddit for Unity3D, which I didn't even know that there's a subreddit, though I suppose it's a subreddit for everything, there are developers showing all of their figures, how many people install the game, what the revenue is, and all of them have basically said this is anywhere between 80 to 103%. 103%. They're going to end up paying more than they've ever made on their game the moment that these changes go through. That is absolutely insane. The crazy part is that everybody has agreed that this is a terrible thing. And, specifically, I don't think they understand what they're doing, and there's a bit of evidence to corroborate this. New installs, trying to determine what is an install for a game, is a very difficult problem. They mention, if I could find the screenshot really quickly, just give me 1 second. Was it Fee SS? Okay, maybe not SS. SS is kind of a cursed term. God damn it. There we go. This is their guarantee, okay? I screenshot this last night. You can see the time at 4 a.m. I was up late. They have fraud detection that's based on their really cool ads technology, and I'm assuming they're going to use AI and stuff for it too. I'm going to tell you right now, from the figures that I saw, from sort of third-party sources, as well as like internally, from when I sort of like looked at, you know, the contract and like what Google basically tells you to expect from your ads, there is a not insignificant amount of fraud alone on web ads. Currently, the most basic web ads out there have click fraud. Okay? It is the most basic type of ad, and thus it has a much smaller problem space. This obviously has a much better solution space, right? When you install stuff, you can do a bunch of things. You can do like a Sony rootkit, like you know, way back in the day with all the controversies. There was a couple of other installer rootkits way back then too, and you can track installs that way. But even then, anybody that tells you that they have a 100% perfect solution to this problem is lying to you. Okay? In my tweets, I said developers, but really, I should have said the company, right? It's not really the developers, but even then, you know what I mean? Like, there's a sense of responsibility there, yes. But overall, this is a business decision founded on technological principles that don't hold water the moment that you start to examine them, okay? Stephen Totillo, okay? This guy is very well known. He used to work at Kotaku. He used to be, I think, the head editor or something? He used to be something there, and then he like moved on to Axios. He's a very well-connected games journalist. He has his hand in a lot of different things. He has his hand in a lot of different places. He has a lot of sources internally in different places as well that can tell him things before it even hits the news. You may notice, for instance, that what he says in these tweets that I'm going to tell you isn't even reflected on this page, nor in their FAQ. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But he mentions two things that they actually talked about. At first, Unity considered any installation of the game as an install. So if the player deletes a game and then reinstalls it, that's 2 installs. So you have to pay 40 cents. Think about this. Think about this for just a moment, okay? Imagine how many people delete games and reinstall games because they stop playing it, they need to make space, they haven't played it in like months, and then months down the line, they get the feeling that they really want to play the game. That is insanity to me, okay? Same if they install on 2 devices, which is actually a legitimate problem. How do you know that these 2 devices are the same person? Is the same player who wants to install this game? However, charity games and bundles are exempted from fees because they're going to talk with the charity bundle provider themselves. So for instance, Games Pass and stuff, they are going to talk directly to Games Pass and try to extract a fee from Games Pass, which I guarantee you, I don't think that's going to last for very long. I don't know how long Xbox is going to want to keep paying those fees. I'm very curious, in fact, with all of the things that have happened, have they even spoken to Microsoft and Xbox about these changes? Have they even cleared this business plan with them? I highly doubt that they cleared these business plans with them. I actually suspect that they didn't clear any of these business plans with them at all, and that they're hoping they can extract the fees from Games Pass, and that they're going to try to But I have a feeling that they're going to fail, and they're going to eventually go back to the developers and say, hey, all those millions of installs on the Xbox Games Pass, you know, that platform that like gives you a game for like a small monthly fee, well, you're on the hook for it now, okay? Sorry about that. We couldn't get it from Xbox. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen, but that's just conjecture. Later on, he got another update, okay? A major update about how they're going to calculate things and how they regrouped internally as a business and changed the terms of what they've decided on. They now say only the initial installation of a game triggers a fee. Demos mostly won't trigger fees. Mostly. Think about that terminology and the phrasing. Mostly, okay? Demos mostly won't trigger fees. And devs are not on the hook for the Game Pass, which is in line with the charity and bundle thing before. They just clarified it here. Even this is a difficult problem to solve. Again, how do you know for sure that the initial install of something across two different types of machines is actually just like the same person installing it, their one copy on like a single thing, right? Steam, for instance, allows me to install my game both onto my Steam Deck and onto my computer. I could do it on two different accounts, but those two machines are completely separate, right? And you wouldn't have any clue. You wouldn't have any clue. How does it work? How does this work with family sharing, for instance, right? Every Unity3D developer, are they going to have to pay for the family sharing? Even though, technically, it's a paid copy only by one person, but it's being installed by two different people at this point, effectively, right? This kills a lot of different avenues that people wanted that people want to use to sort of spread their game throughout, right? Because again, a lot of games is difficult to make a demo for, and so stuff like family share helps people get a sense of like how the game is going to be like on their own before they themselves drop, you know, their money on it because they want to play at the same time as their friend or something, right? At least that's how it's been for like me. This is all a terrible business design. Unity is going to have to change something or people are going to leave. Exactly. And there's a lot of posts about this already all over Twitter, which is, it's kind of nuts how much this has blown up. Aggro Crab Games, which I forget which game that they made. The developers of Cult of the Lamb and the developers of Among Us, okay? Three very well-known game developers. Aggro Crab Games, I'm sorry, I forget which game Gilly made. They all said that if this goes through, their business is going to take such a massive hit that they have to port to Unreal. Otherwise, they're at a loss permanently. It's so bad that I don't know what to think about it anymore. But this is in line with what I've said for a long time. The operating structure of the Unity Corporation is rife with holes where, as a consumer of their product, which is as a game developer, you're going to be abused by them in ways that you can't even begin to comprehend because they have no other revenue stream, okay? Let's get into like discussion of like Epic versus Unity here. Unity3D makes no money off of their engine except for their licensing fee. It makes sense that they need to make money, right? The truth is, developing this stuff is not cheap, right? Realistically, they probably should have just either upped their license cost or added a revenue share. This method that they've gone with is so convoluted, so insane, and so painful to work with that it ends up resulting in a worse overall experience for anybody but the highest players in the business. Okay? Genshin Impact, the developers of Genshin Impact, which is Hoyo Software, MiHoYo. Wait, what was it? MiHoYo. What's the name? MiHoYo Co. Okay. They're still gonna make bajillions of dollars off of their game, even if this goes through, because they have such a large user base that pays for their stuff that it doesn't matter. This install fee is gonna basically be a drop in the bucket. Again, 1 cent per install. If you consider that a single whale in Genshin Impact can drop a minimum of $1,000, paying a penny for their one install, you would have to get like a million installs to really start to get to the point where this starts to hurt compared to your percentage of like whales in that game, right? This hurts mostly indie developers at the lowest scale as well as at the medium scale when they're starting to rise out of the indie space and they're starting to compete within the AA to AAA space. This is when these fees start to hurt the most for these smaller developers. Again, as I mentioned before, Oberdin is, you know, 25.99 Canadians, like 21, 23 something USD. It's a well-known indie game, And for them, it's a fraction of the price. It's roughly like 1%. But for a smaller developer who's making a free-to-play game that relies on in-app purchases, they're going to be paying out the ass. The crazy part is that this install fee, by the way, which I forgot to mention, includes every time you reload a WebGL page. So, just to clarify here, let me see if I can find it, because I forgot to pull this up just in time. One moment. Because there's two other aspects of this. That's crazy. WebGL. God damn it, I hate these still stupid little drop open menus. Why? Okay, if you're gonna, just listen. I'm just gonna rant about web developers for a second, because I used to be one. I used to be many different hats of a programmer. But if you're a web developer and you make a page that has a lot of content, don't hide it behind these summary detail elements, yes? The problem is that you want to show it all so that people can quickly Control F to reveal what they already know. They're not going to remember headings, they're going to remember content. The headings by themselves don't really matter because this is more just a general question. When you really want to know, okay, how does this affect XYZ specific scenario? It's somewhere in here. I can't find it. I'll find it later for the video. But Unity3D lets you export your games to be run on the browser in the web. It's how a lot of games on itch.io work, actually. There's a lot of games that you can play on itch.io. For instance, y'all might remember that Irish Baby game. That Irish Baby game you could just play in your browser. Well, every time you go to that page and you reload the page, it will cost you 20 cents. Anytime a player of your game goes to that page and reloads the page, it'll cost you 20 cents. Yep, that's exactly what that means. Because every time you reload, you're technically reinstalling the game. You have to pull back down all of the assets. What? Irish Baby? Okay, maybe you missed that segment. But Irish Baby? Yeah, I'm not going to pull it up. Just like search Irish Baby. Irish Baby Rifleman. Irish Baby Rifleman. Then you'll know. On top of that, this fee has a bit of an interesting way of handling emerging markets. You may notice that emerging markets is just anywhere that isn't these places, okay? So for instance, Argentina, okay? If you have the personal license, in which case your threshold is just immediately whatever this is, and on every single install, it costs 2 cents per install. If you have Unity Pro, that's 1 cent per install. And if you have Unity Enterprise, it's half a cent per install, okay? Look at Return of Obra Dinn, okay? This game costs roughly 32 cents USD, okay? In Argentine pesos, yes? This means that when you buy the game in Argentina, an emerging market by their terms, and obviously, like, there's a whole bunch of different reasons why the pricing is, like, different for different places. I'm just talking about the dollar values here, right? 32 cents, okay? You're making revenue of 32 cents on that sale. On top of that, it costs you 2 cents per install. That is roughly 6.7% of your total revenue just for that one person buying it. This goes down to 3% if you have Unity Pro and 1.5% if you have Unity Enterprise. This basically kills all sales in emerging markets. Absolutely kills it. And there's nothing that you can do about it. I highly suspect that game developers in emerging markets are probably going to go downhill at this point, and that the market is going to revert back into what it currently, or what it was for a long time, which was just people caught like pirating games over, doing fan translations, and trying to distribute them because there's no legal way or reasonable way to buy the games without paying out the ass. If you can remember, this is how Japanese games used to be sold in the West. This is how Nintendo games used to be sold in the West for a very long time early on in their life cycle. There's a lot of games that you still can't buy here, and buying a copy of, I think, Mother 3 or Mother 1 or something, and then having to and then waiting for the fan translation to come out, buying a legit copy can cost you upwards of $100 or more. It's actually absurd. Although I think they recently changed that with their re-releases of the classics on the Switch or something. Got to go. Sorry, might be back. No worries. See you later and have a good day. There's never any expectation for you to stay, so don't worry. This is all terrible news for indie developers of all kinds, and I can't believe that they went through with this. I genuinely can't. Even with their small changes, this doesn't really change anything. Again, if somebody says to you that they have a technical solution that's going to solve the install portion of like things, they're lying to you, okay? If they say that there's no way that you'll be overcharged or that there's no way that they'll make a mistake, they're lying to you. Even if they undercount the number of installs, nobody will ever trust that the numbers that they purport are at all accurate to what's going on. And the crazy part is that you have no recourse. Because this is now in your contract, you can't just get out of it by not paying. You have to sue them. And suing people costs money. Costs money, costs time, it costs effort. It takes away a lot of potential energy that you could be spending towards your product and putting it towards a legal matter just to potentially recoup costs on fraudulent installs or something. And this is ripe for fraudulent activity. You have to understand, it's very easy to just think of a scenario where you can absolutely game the system, okay? If you piss off a member in your gaming community, okay? I hate that term, but let's just use it for now. You piss off someone in your gaming community, and they absolutely want to get back at you, and they're technically minded. All they have to do is spin up a couple of virtual machines on AWS, okay? Even spin up like a couple of dedicated servers, whatever, right? They use the I forget the like actual name of it, but it's a dynamic pricing model which I charges based on time spent. They spin it up for a couple of minutes to download the games, install them, and then deletes the games off your system. And that's if you have to download them. I can think of a way to make it even worse. Download the game once, and just copy the files over and do the installation without having to go through a network. It lowers your costs, increases time, and drastically increases the amount that you have to pay as a game developer. This is the only pricing scheme that I've ever seen that puts the amount of fees that you pay in the hands of the consumer. Not even credit cards do this. Even credit card processors, right? Think of Visa, think of MasterCard. They charge you a fee based on the total amount that you charge, aka a revenue royalty, effectively. It operates roughly the same. Unreal Engine has done a revenue royalty. A lot of older engines, way before, when there were more than 2 engines that basically competed with everything else, did revenue royalties. Because it is the most simple to understand structure. It has the lowest entry to barrier. Because again, if you make $0, well, guess what? You pay $0, right? If you make $100,000, well, you pay, $50. Like it scales. I mean, $500 or something. I don't know, 5,000. I don't know. But either way, it scales a lot better with smaller developers, and it scales just as well with larger developers. You still get the cut that you deserve as an engine developer. Again, I'm not saying that Unity3D doesn't deserve to make money off their product. It is a very complex product, and making a game engine is not easy. Just the amount of things you have to do correctly to make the graphics of your game work is immense. Let alone the sound, let alone the physics, let alone all kinds of other things in your game, right? And that's on top of making all the tooling to make it so that game developers can interface with that stuff in a much easier way. Instead, what we have is this. They have gone with the worst possible pricing scheme, and I'm very surprised if this will ever go through. And honestly, all of these things that I've seen about it, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. They don't look like they're going to back down. And I feel really bad for game developers at the moment because, well, they're all basically doomed. And I kind of figured that this would happen too, because again, I've long since said to my little, group. I have a little group, which you may kind of realize from my old email. They wanted to go on Unity3D at first, and I told them no. We're gonna stick with Unreal Engine, okay? Just for comparison, I think Unreal Engine and Epic Games does this a lot better because of one specific thing, okay? And I'll get back to sort of the now we're circling back to the corporate structure side of things because I finally finished those 2 points. Unity3D only makes money off of their engine, right? And that's a problem. Unreal Engine, for instance, has Epic Games, and Epic Games actually makes money off of Fortnite. Because if you don't know, Fortnite recently had Jujutsu Kaisen skins, Demon Slayer skins. Dude, they had Naruto skins. They had like all kinds of crazy skins. They had Batman skins. They have, what was it, Superman? They have Spider-Man skins. They have Ariana Grande, for the love of God. Dude, they make so much money off of their free-to-play game that they can fund the development of Unreal Engine easily. And even if they couldn't, I guarantee you that the royalty revenue fee that they charge on Unreal Engine is more than enough to cover all of their development costs of Unreal Engine. Specifically, these 2 models are at odds with each other. I said before that Unreal Engine's model is based on a you win, we win situation, right? There are different kinds of models that you can take, and a you win, we win situation model is the best kind of model. Because again, when the game developer wins, so does Unreal Engine. This also incentivizes Unreal Engine to work on features that specifically drive developer usage of their engine, which then drives sales, because then the more developers that use your engine, overall you'll have more games going to market, and overall you'll capture a larger portion of the game market pie, and that's more revenue being made that is going to be attributed back to your engine via your 5% fee. This is in contrast to this model, which is a we win, we win. This is a we win model. This has so many edge cases that it causes certain types of developers to completely get demolished by what they're doing. Which again, this alienates the entire free-to-play market, the entire mobile market, which is entirely based on install numbers. And it... How do I say this? I'm trying to think of the best way to say this next part. This is the only way that they could make money, and so it makes sense that they go for this, and I don't necessarily fault them for it. What I fault them for is that they could have gone for a we win, you win model and just upped their license fee, but realistically, they need to make money somehow. I'm not necessarily faulting Unity3D for trying to seek out money. They need to make money. But for a company this large, that does all these other shitty products and all these other different features that don't necessarily help the average game developer, I'm not surprised that they've gone with this very shitty pricing scheme. Everything that Unreal Engine does is about making their engine better to use for game developers, for you to push out cooler and crazier games. Everything that Unity3D does is about building a new service to try to charge you more money so that they can make more money off of you. They've just... a lot of what Unity has been doing as a corporation has been building out a lot of cloud services, cloud builds, cloud CI, cloud automation. Unreal Engine has said, okay, we're not going to do any of that because most of the time, pretty much all the time, you're going to have an in-house solution that's A, a lot better at doing this, and B, significantly cheaper, right? Instead, we're just going to focus on making an engine that has products and features that you need and want as a game developer in order to create your vision and bring it to life. By contrast, Unity3D, for instance, still has 2 render pipelines, which means 2 different ways for your game to look, either high quality or low quality. They also have 2 different ways of actually building out entities in the game world and allowing them to interact with different systems. They have the ECS-like system, which is now dead. I forget what it's called. It's not mass, but it's like... It's something weird, okay? But that system has been in beta since forever because the lead developer basically couldn't finish it because he wasn't given the space to. They have a bunch of other systems that they've tried to make and that are now left in a half-finished state that we as developers have to deal with. On top of that, they have no game of their own of which they can dog food these implementations and also make revenue with in order to help sort of like tide them over during times of great duress or stress, okay? The money that Fortnite makes basically carries Epic Games. They can do a whole bunch of things. They can run their own Epic Games Store, give away free games every month, of which I need to check this month's free games just in case it's the Balloons PvP game. And they'll never have to worry if things go bad or if the market dies out completely because they'll have enough revenue just from the game alone to tide them over until new game developers start to come in and use the engine again. Unity3D has had multiple attempts at making their own games, but every single time it's failed. It's failed to pan out because they've always said it's too difficult to bring it to market. I can't find the forum post at this moment, and I tried to find it for like a while, but it seems like they've either deleted it or the link is like long dead. It used to be on their like forums, and I don't know if their forums are still up, to be quite honest with you. Or if I can even view it, because apparently you need an account or something. But in that post, they revealed that all of their game projects, they decided to like always act early because even though they learned quite a bit, they could never learn enough to actually launch the game. That's a very bad sign that they don't necessarily understand what they're doing and they have no way of dogfooding these features to see if people even want these features. I'm curious how this is going to go in the future. I've talked to a couple of friends who are game developers and they've all said that they're very saddened by it and that this basically kills their game. I mean, there's a bunch of posts on like Twitter from game developers showing that if this ever goes through, that they're going to be paying out the ass, even in a normal situation where 1 purchase equals 1 install of the game, which is not the norm. Again, tracking installations is a very complicated process because how do you track and install that's unique across every single variable that your computer has? It's very difficult. And specifically, it's difficult because of a lot of different things that systems have done to prevent tracking, right? A lot of different systems do a lot of things to protect your privacy and prevent tracking. Think about iPhones, for instance. Fun fact also, iPhones and even Android phones, they will sometimes reinstall your apps like dynamically the moment that you start it in order to save space and in order to reshuffle things and basically do like, disk, which is actually kind of funny to like think about. You may have seen it in your Android phone as like a deep cold storage thing. I suspect, and from what I've seen, there is already a much larger exodus towards Unreal Engine as a whole because of these changes. And I suspect that number to grow over time until they actually say and walk back all of these changes entirely and rethink their entire strategy and go towards more of a revenue share. However, I also suspect that the Unity Corporation, what's the name again? That Unity Technologies won't walk it back and that they won't go for a revenue share because, specifically, this model gives them a lot of money, enough money to survive, and it doesn't piss off their biggest users, which are developers like Genshin Impact, right? Users who bring in a lot of money on their own and basically use the engine to do whatever they want at that scale. Because again, if they lose those big developers, their entire business goes downhill. This is on top of the fact that as a company, Unity Technologies, I think is still at a loss. Like, I think they're losing like 90 billion or something. Like, they lose a shit ton of money per like year or something. Like a shit ton of money. They are a surprisingly unprofitable enterprise, and I'm surprised that they've even gotten this far with what they've had so far. And I'm not necessarily, again, I'm not surprised that they had to go back and figure out a new pricing scheme. Overall, I'm just sad that they chose the worst pricing scheme possible to try to solve their problems, because they have some clear issues that they have to solve, and this is the worst way to go about it. But that's all for this discussion. It's just something that I thought you should know. Obviously, I'm going to have a better video on this that has more figures, but I just wanted to talk about it today because this is the craziest thing that I've ever seen a business do. I've never seen a business shoot themselves in the foot before, besides X, which is still the dumbest name I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, there's two other things I want to talk about. We'll start with a small fun one. One, the Mobile Madness VOD is finally out, so you can actually go watch that now. You can now get to see the origin of this event thing. They really should add an event where your colony gets peed on the bottom left of my screen. Two, there's this thing called a voice cell. So this got really popular for some reason. It's pretty funny actually. Some people have a lot of people have taken it, and it's kind of funny to see their reaction to it. This thing basically checks if you are a voice cell, which I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, I just want to clarify. This is all nonsense. This is all nonsense. There is a voice economy, okay? Much like there is kind of like an attraction economy, right? Technically, if all people know about you is your voice, then technically, what you want is to have a good, nice radio announcer voice, right? That's the way that you sell a lot of things. If you have a very annoying, quote-unquote, sounding voice, then obviously it won't sell as much or whatever. There is technically like a reach thing associated with like the stereotypical norm. But the problem is that the norms don't necessarily matter. The truth is, if you're just an entertaining person or if you're whatever, then your voice doesn't matter. In fact, if you're just a person, your voice doesn't matter. Your voice is such a small part of who you are that what you sound like doesn't actually matter. I'm not saying this because I'm a voice cell. I think my score was like decently low. The problem is that this site that's sort of going around and memeing people makes it seem like if you're a voice cell, that you're just destined to die alone and you have to buy these supplements, these homeopathic supplements that will potentially increase your testosterone, which, by the way, they don't work. I guarantee you they don't work, and there's barely any science behind it. Now, this site, the way it works is that you record a sentence, and it measures how Chadly you sound. The lower your voice is, the more Chadlier you are. Imagine, okay, the voice of the guy who voiced Kratos in the new God of War game. He's like, boy. His voice would probably score at like a 50 or like a 40. Like, his voice is very, very low. Now, it's funny because I've seen this site being used by people who very obviously have very high voices. Like, I follow a lot of people on different platforms that have high voices, like Nyaners or Hackling and stuff, or Lily Pichu and stuff. And like those types of voices are getting like really high scores, and so they're all joking and saying we're doomed to die alone. We're all voice cells. Say it ain't so. Now I'm curious what my voice is like. I think last time I like did it, I was like at like a, I don't know, I was like a lowish number, but I was also like half asleep. So because again, I did all this at like 4 a.m. You saw this the screenshot. I'm gonna try this live because I have no clue what this is going to be like. I do need to change my browser settings though, because I disallow microphone use. Because who the hell allows microphone use? That's weird. I don't know. Just give me a moment to do this. We're gonna check if I'm a voice cell. Which is still so stupid to think about. That's such a stupid term. Are you a voice cell? Alright. Let's try this. There's apparently this. Allow. I am currently testing my voice. Okay, well, I barely even. I'm currently testing my voice. My favorite color is blue. The sky is sunny. My voice is loud and clear. Using a proper mic, and my environment is quiet. Is it working? Your medium was 119 hertz. Mid. Deep voice Chad, voice cell at 130. 155 hertz is voice cell, it's over. How low can I get actually? Because mind you, I do project my voice for the mic to make it a bit easier to hear. But if I just like relax and I talk normally, this is like, I sound very different basically when I'm not projecting my like voice for the show. Let me boost the volume actually on my mic. I'm currently testing my voice. My favorite color is blue. The sky is sunny. My voice is loud and clear. I'm using a proper mic. My environment is quiet. I'm a Chad! I'm a fucking Chad! Okay, you got the voice cell shit? This voice cell shit definitely works. Guys, I guarantee you, if you're a voice cell, there's a problem with you. I'm a fucking Chad. But yeah, that's the voice economy. I just wanted to show it to you all because I found it so stupid. It's the dumbest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, who cares? Who cares what your voice sounds like? People have such a fascination with these like different stereotypes that they fall into. Of like, people feel like you have to be masculine, or you have to be like a cool, popular dude, or you like sports or something. You're like, and you can't sound like this or something. But there's nothing wrong with sounding like this. The truth is, I mean, you're a human being. I'm a human being. It doesn't matter if I sound like this. I have a whole life ahead of me. I have a whole life behind me. I've lived an entire life. Look at who you are, fully, in every point of you. There's more to you than your voice, than your looks, everything about it. You're a human being with a complexity that no tracker can ever truly understand. That not even a single person who knows everything about you can understand. Only you really know the depths of your complexity. So never feel like you're a Chad or a voice cell or whatever. A Chad cell or a voice cell? I don't know, that sounds stupid. Well, except for the fact that I'm a Chad voice, motherfuckers. Sorry. It's fun. It's fun to know that I'm a Chad cell. But that's enough talking about very sad things with the game development space. And obviously, those are jumbled thoughts that I prepared very, very quickly because this is a part of a series of videos that I'm making called Bad Business. They'll come out more. I'll come out more with it after. So, but yeah, I'm just so sad. I made like a long ass series of like posts on like Twitter with my 30-minute like checks on it, and I was like, oh my god, it's disgustingly awful. But today we're gonna play some variety games. Okay. I am not gonna play Starfield. Potentially. I mean, I always say that, but I've never not played Starfield every time I've said... I've never not played Starfield every time I've said that, okay? So we're gonna try not to play Starfield, and we're gonna try to play some other games, because I need a bit of a reset on my dopamine receptors. That reset is across the Oculus. So give me one moment to set it up, and we'll start right into it.